forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies, and welcome to another edition of the Reverend's Midnight Black Mass. We're back. Thanks for all that joined us last week on the Best of NWA Wildside Part 1. That was a recap of the first 3 of a 6-part series of interviews I did with Bill Behrens earlier in the history of the show, and we're going to bring Part 2 back coming up real soon, possibly as early as next week. Our guest tonight, former WCW Wildside and Nashville star Air Paris, going to be joining the show. He's not really done an interview of this type since he left the wrestling business, and so this is a first here on the show to have him break his silence about his career and what he meant. He was an important performer to the NWA Wildside days, the important performer to Nashville, and was primed to do a lot of things in the business, but instead he opted to go the family route. And so he kind of talks about that. And so it's really cool. It's a cool interview because you get a perspective from both sides. You get a guy that lived for the business while he was in it, but a guy who was able to successfully break away from it and live a happy life outside of it without wrestling. So it, plus a whole lot of fun and craziness. There's a couple things off the top that Paris wanted to mention after we got off the air and we're talking on the phone. So I just wanted to go ahead and throw those out there. He stated that he didn't give Bill Behrens near enough credit in the course of the interview for everything that he did for him in terms of making his career, and he didn't want to sound ungrateful. So keep that in mind as you listen to it. Also, there was a story about a match he had with Sabu that he really wanted to tell. And we just ran out of time and kind of got sidetracked there. So looks like he's going to be coming back on the show down the line for a part 2. He said he would come back and could definitely talk for another episode's worth. So we're going to have Paris back coming up in a few weeks for a part 2 where he's going to elaborate more on that in detail. Why I wanted to go with a Wildside guy this week? Well, as we've heard, one of the biggest stories in the wrestling news right now, other than CM Punk signing with the UFC, would be that Anarchy Wrestling, the NWA NCW Anarchy Arena, I'm trying to think if it's had any other names, the old Level Grove building, the old Mud Creek School Gym in Cornelia, Georgia, the little engine that could have professional wrestling back to 1998, producing some of the top stars in the industry today, may very well be shutting its doors for good in December, as they have 2 shows left on the calendar. It's like it's going to wrap up the season's meetings. They're the Saturday after Christmas. And if the new owner has not taken over, someone hasn't purchased the promotion, very well likely that a building that has seen not just wrestling, but great professional wrestling for the last 15 years is going to close. And that's going to be a sad day. There's not too many promotions on the independent level that have that kind of history behind them. And it's rough. It's going to be a hard day for me to know that happens. Like, even though I'm not really involved down there, I can promise you, spoiler alert, I'll be popping in to say goodbye if this really is the end before it's all said and done. So you can count on seeing me there at some point. But just like, it's where I became a man. It's where I met most of my best friends that I still have to this day. It was a real special time in the wrestling business, and very, very honored to have been such a gigantic contributor to the wrestling there during that time. And there will not be anything like that for a long time to come in independent wrestling. I always say goes back to that combination of a magic in space and time, and that's exactly what allowed Wildside and Anarchy to exist and thrive at times, as well as produce some of the top talent in the industry today. God, it would be such a sad day if that building closes, but I just kind of had to get my thoughts on that out there. We'll be appearing live Friday night, December the 12th in Blue Ridge, Georgia for Deep Southern Championship Wrestling, back at their home base of the DSCW Arena, returning home for the first time in over a year. Very excited to join DSCW again. It's always a treat to get out there in front of the fans of Blue Ridge, Georgia. There's some quite passionate and vocal fans, and they certainly don't mind letting you know how they feel about you. So we'll be there with the Strong Style Psycho Tank in action as he's going to be taking on Kyle Matthews. Quite a clash of styles, but two of the very best at what they do against each other. So going to be a great match, and looking forward to being at ringside for that. And then also Gunner from TNA Wrestling will be on this card as well. And a whole lot more. Always a great time with Deep Southern Championship Wrestling. Check them out online, dscw.org, or on Twitter at dscw101. You can also catch me at Empire Wrestling on December the 20th. The date it's the first and third Saturday of every month. I'm usually there, and if I'm not, you still need to be there because they're putting on some of the greatest professional wrestling in the Southeast or in the country right now. For my money, I saw a fan who's promoting Empire, just putting it over to his colleagues on a message board. Just totally random thing. This guy's like well outside of the audience of what the local Empire fans would draw, but people are starting to catch on to the internet stuff they've got going on over there at EmpireWrestling.net. Check them out. What, not my words, a fan of the product's words, recommended is if you're a fan of indie wrestling, but you're not a fan of the niche products. Nothing wrong with that. All those guys that do Crate Chikara, they know what they're doing and they're selling tickets. Ring of Honor knows what they're doing and they're selling tickets. PWG knows what they're doing and they're selling tickets. So, they're doing far better than most. I ain't got nothing bad to say about them. But if you prefer a promotion that's not just based on a niche style of wrestling, but is more a tribute to your 70s and 80s professional wrestling, both the territorial style and even some of the New York stuff that they did in the 70s and 80s, then I think that Empire Wrestling is your place to be. As far as just traditional wrestling, which no one is seeming to do, even on the WWE, all the way down to the indie level, Empire Wrestling is trying to corner that niche, if you will. If you can consider traditional professional wrestling a niche, I certainly wouldn't have at one point, but who knows? Right now, maybe it is. So, but that would be my recommendation. You should definitely check them out. And that's all I got for you right now. I could go on a long Revs rant this week, but I'm going to save it. I went on an extremely long one last week. And I just, I will kind of touch on that a little. I didn't want to come across as bitter or an angry person. I was in a really bad mood last week. I felt like shit. So you got the rather surly side of me. That's not always what I'm about. And certainly I'm the people I have tried to help or helped in wrestling is immeasurable compared to the people I've slagged. And I certainly didn't feel appropriate. It was called, to call anybody out by name, because that's not what that was about. I don't have any problem doing it if, somebody thinks that that's not the case, but that's not what that was about. It was just more about expressing frustrations with the whole mindset in the modern era. But that's not to discount anything that is being done right, because there's a lot of that. And I think I tend to focus on the right more than the negative. And I think most people should. So that's just to address last week's rant. If you thought it was a bit on the negative side, more so than usual, I was in a bit more of a negative mood than usual. So that's how that came about. We're going to go to break right now. We'll be right back after commercial with the interview with Air Paris. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Midnight Black Mass.
Having an autograph session, personal appearance, or live event, we got just the person you need to contact for all of those needs. SBI Bookings is home of some of the best stars in the wrestling industry today. They provide you with the best talent this business has to offer, from Kevin Nash, Larry Zbyszko, Scott Steiner, and many, many more. So who will you contact next time you're planning an event? The men of SBI Bookings. Check them out at sbibookings.com.
Wrestling fans, Anarchy Wrestling television tapings are the second and fourth Saturdays of every month at 4236 Level Grove Road in Cornelia, Georgia. For more information on Anarchy Wrestling and on the shows, to watch the television product, and a whole lot more, go to anarchy-wrestling.net. That's Anarchy Wrestling, the second and fourth Saturdays of every month in Cornelia, Georgia.
Hey, kids, you know you want to be the coolest cat on the block with your official Midnight Black Mass merchandise, available at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Just in time for Halloween, we have brand new Midnight Black Mass t-shirts. We have reject t-shirts, we have beanies, we have hoodies, and more over at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Get your merchandise today and be one of the cool kids. Where can you find 24/7 pro wrestling, MMA, talk radio, and more? BeyondRingside.com, featuring 24/7 streaming audio, including the Midnight Black Mass, Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, except for pay-per-view weekends when they run a mini marathon and the Midnight Black Mass goes on as its namesake at midnight. But don't forget the other great shows like Beyond Ringside, Wrestle Rage, To Be Determined, and more. That's BeyondRingside.com.
And we're back on this week's edition of the Midnight Black Mass. My guest at this time, an old friend I haven't talked to in quite a while, actually, especially in detail about wrestling. So I'm really looking forward to this. He was a WCW star. He was a star in NWA Wildside in the Nashville area. He was one of the last travelers of the territory days in its dying times. Ladies and gentlemen, one hell of a dude, Air Paris, joins the show. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing well. How about yourself, bro?
I'm doing awesome. So here lately we've been. Oh, hey, it's my pleasure, man. My pleasure to have you. We've been covering Wildside history here on the show for quite a while, in bits and spurts. We've talked to pretty much everybody. You know, we talked to Bill, we talked to AJ, we talked to all the various cast of characters. You were always one of the most unique and very pivotal in really launching Wildside to that next level, in my opinion. Guys like you and AJ kind of took it from your basic territorial indie show to something that was a little bit different. So I just thought it was very important to have you on.
Man, I appreciate that. I talk about not talking with me about wrestling a while. And I haven't talked wrestling, at any kind of length with anybody in quite a while. So this will be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, one of my initial question is always like to go back and not to do the same old, how'd you get started in the business, because that's going to come up. But what lit your fire initially when you were a little kid? When you first saw wrestling, what was it that stoked that flame that made you say, damn it, this is what I want to do?
Man, to be honest with you, my first memories of wrestling was probably at my great-grandparents' house. And, it's that same one. You probably heard it from everybody. The Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express was on TV. And that's just one of those things where you see it and it grabs you. But at any point did I ever think that would be something I would actually do? Probably not, man. My sister married a guy who became a wrestler, on a really local level. And getting to be around it and then just starting to try to bug and pester my way into a locker room, you know how that goes. And then, finally got an opportunity to take a few bumps and get thrown around, and then it became something that was actually reachable,
Yeah, absolutely. In your early days when you were that young kid pestering people to get into the locker room, who were some of the guys that kind of took you under your wing and showed you the right way? Because we all know if we didn't have those guys who were kind enough to kind of scoop us up, then we might have been languishing in Shitsville for a lot longer than we were.
Well, as bad as he probably wishes he hadn't done it, because they're stuck with me to this day. David Young, Bobby Hayes, those guys. Then a little later on, Terry Lawler. Those guys really kind of, gave me an opportunity to be a little brother, and they kind of gave me a bit of shelter from some of the idiots who would have came in and beat up on me because I was 150 pounds. But, looking back, if they could change it, they probably would, because, like I said, they're stuck with me to this day. Those are the guys that I started working with, and, I don't care who trains you. David Young taught me how to wrestle. Getting to work with him on shows everywhere, we would go everywhere together, and he taught me how to travel on the road, how to live on the road, how to not get in trouble by trying to get in trouble. That kind of like you've rode with David, so that's where I learned to be a wrestler was working with him.
Those are such intangibles too, like guys now they learn the mechanics, but there's so few guys left like David to teach guys the other side of it, living on the road, getting from town to town, getting in a little bit of trouble. Maybe that's not always the best thing, but yeah, absolutely,
make
So
that was awesome.
Yeah, you look at a guy like David. No, you're fine. You look at a guy like David like that, and you just think, I just wish there were more guys like that today.
Absolutely, man. And there were those Nashville trips where it would be, and this was a little later on, I'd kind of gotten, some experience on my belt, but then you're in a truck and you're going through Amish country in Kentucky with Bart Sawyer and TJ Gray and David, just raising as much hell as you possibly can. That's living on the road. That's been a wrestler for me.
Absolutely. That's part of the lifestyle, just indulging in that fun side of it. That guys, the business has changed, and I don't want to be one of those guys that's like always, well, back in my day, by God. But it kind of is, and it's sad to see that side of it go.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The younger guys now, they're lucky if they've got 2 shows a week. And we were traveling everywhere. Music City would have us in, Tennessee a couple nights, maybe Missouri. I believe it was Fredericksburg or something like that. We would always come off to, and then you do Kentucky, and then you come back and you do Wildside for Bill. So we were on the road 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah, it was really the last days of those territorial type things. People say Smoky Mountain was like the last territory. And as far as like a full-fledged where guys are just totally making a good, comfortable living off of it and everything, yeah, sure. But, we were fortunate to get the very tail end of it there in the late 90s and early 2000s, at least where you still had places like Wildside or Nashville where they're running 3 or 4 towns a week, and still getting to do that and make those traveling dates. So you spent some time on the North Georgia scene and started establishing your name there. You mentioned you got hooked up with David Young. You really rose to prominence in independent wrestling. People started paying attention to you at your time in Nashville with Burt Prentice. So do you care to just elaborate on how that kind of came to be and what you learned out of that experience?
No, absolutely not. Man, to be honest, I got the Nashville bookings via Bill. David was working for Bill doing Loganville and some other spots for Bill, and he got me a couple shows with him. Through that, Bert saw me work for Bill. He did the name change. At that time, I was wrestling as Kid Ego, and Bill hated it. And so he actually gave me the Air Paris name. We changed that. Got to go to Nashville. At that point, I kind of hooked up with Chris Harris and at the time Prince Justice, Abyss. I started traveling with those guys and kind of got me a family up there. So, at that point, any shows they ran, I became a part of and had that built-in trust with the other guys where I wasn't afraid to not go up and do 5-6 states at a time or something.
Yeah, that's what's missing really today too with guys. That's not their fault. It's just that there's not the 4 or 5 days in a row for a lot of them to get out there and hit. At least that's within a reasonable distance. And in our day, a reasonable distance was like 5 or 6 hours, and now it's probably shorter than that. But
absolutely.
Yes, they're not
that was
getting
the benefit of not having a real job at that point. I didn't have a real job at that point, so I could go up and kind of just do those tours and not have to worry about it, and be that starving traveling wrestler. I guess woe is me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we got. And not to not discount any of those guys, but also they put me with Cassidy Riley. They put me and him together as a tag team, and talking wrestling, that just throws 2 more names up: Ashley and Corey Williams. Ashley Hutt and Corey Williams. They put us with those guys, and I learned a ton of tag team stuff from those guys. They were so much fun to wrestle with every time I got a chance, and it's funny because I haven't really thought about those guys in a long time, but jogging the old memory bank, and those are just great times.
They were, and man, they were a hot team at that time. They had more heat. And for the fans that don't know, we're talking about the New South. It was Ashley Hudson and Corey Williams. It was an Australian guy and a black guy representing Confederacy, and they had the stars and bars, and it just, pissing off the Nashville fans. And they had as much heat as anybody in the business at that time. And so you and Cassidy were the hot young baby faces coming up, and the people really identified with you. What is so awesome about working as a baby face in Nashville? Because that's one place that everybody loves to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of that credit goes to Corey and Ashley, man. We got put together to sort of, I don't know if we were supposed to be the replacements for when Shannon and Shane and Christian and Joey all left. But they were we were the small, I guess reasonably, modestly good-looking baby faces at that point. So that was kind of a built-in spot that we were fortunate enough to roll into. Yeah,
they had kind of laid the groundwork there with the Bad Street Boys, which, as you mentioned, and for the fans that don't know, that'd be Joey Mercury, Christian York, Shane Helms, and Shannon Moore, who all went on to their own levels of fame, but they first rose up right there in Nashville, and you guys kind of came in behind them, did that whole deal. The Nashville scene is certainly a drastic difference from the Georgia scene, which from there, Wildside kind of started becoming a thing, and you got that experience working on TV in Nashville. You got to translate that. So before we move on to Wildside, talk about the importance of getting to learn working on television, especially for these young guys who might be listening.
Man, you don't realize how much you're learning as you're doing it. You find yourself trying to work a hard cam. If you've never worked television, you better pray you've got a good referee in there that can tell you where you need to be looking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But learning time cues, stuff like that. Realizing that you've only got one chance to really make it look good. Even though we were taped, they didn't do a lot of editing in Nashville. They wouldn't. If you screwed up, it was going to make television. So making sure you were doing stuff that you could pull off, and the importance of getting it right the first time, that's huge as far as TV. And the Wildside fans were far less forgiving as far as screwing up. They would let you know. In Nashville, you might get by with it. That's Tennessee, Southern wrestling. If you screw something up, they're not going to pick you apart on it. But Wildside fans were a lot more discriminating at that point.
Yeah, they drew more of like an ECW type crowd where they were a little more hip to what was going on. And I mean, you had your traditional rural fans certainly mixed in with that, but a good percentage of those were vocal, intelligent fans. So you had to really go out there, and you really had to deliver the goods, man. And you guys did. You came into Wildside, and you were there as a babyface, kind of doing things, but it really lit off when the Suicidal Tendencies thing came together. And you guys started feuding with the NWA Elite. So what about Suicidal Tendencies would you like to share as far as how that came to be and the guys that you worked with during that group?
Man, talk about coming from Nashville and the differences in there in Wildside. If you remember, me and you were talking, one of my first nights in, you said, "Where are you from?" And I said, make it Nashville. These fans hate Music City Wrestling. You remember that?
Yes.
So that was me trying to generate a little cheap heat. I was coming in as a Music City guy as opposed to being a Wildside guy. The Suicidal Tendencies name, we actually, me and Phoenix did that first in Warzone Wrestling for Ruckus. Do you remember Dion?
Ruckus was a former Wildside champion. He was a tough guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a company when ECW was started up. We used to run at the International Ballroom down in Atlanta. There were a lot of the same, faces you'd see Georgia wrestling, but he put me and Phoenix together, and we started doing the Suicidal Tendencies thing there. And Bill just gave us the opportunity to do it in Wildside. And as soon as that got a little steam under it, I started trying to, of course, recruit good people and get my friends in it. And at that time, it was always me and you and Pierce and Adam in a car heading that way because we were all the North Georgia, this end of the state crew. So the first chance I could, I got Bill's ear and pulled Adam into that as well.
Yeah, what an underrated talent in Adam Jacobs. I think there's a guy that's never really gotten his due on the national scene as far as how good he actually is as being just a natural in the ring. Absolutely, man.
Anytime I've had a show that I was booking or running or anything like that, he's one of those guys that has a spot no matter what. What's crazy is the older he's gotten, the better he is. You know what I mean? He looks better. He's in better shape. Anytime those people do, those Facebook polls, who's the most underrated or the best unsigned cruiserweight or whatever, Adam's always the guy he's the answer, that never got an opportunity. He's always the answer to that question.
Yeah, and I really don't think it's too late for him, though I know he probably does. I mean, he's still out there making towns, and he's still out there, and like you said, the older he gets, it seems the better he gets. But, that really goes with anybody with half a brain on their head, because the more you work, the more you learn how to get the most out of a little bit, which, in the early days, it's all about killing yourself to get noticed. And then you learn really well you don't have to do that. Actually, why don't you talk about that? Because that kind of exemplifies some of how your career went. You were known as a crazy risk taker in your early days, and by the time you became a popular star, you really had limited that because you learned how to work smart.
Man, to be honest, when I first started doing the crazy stuff, I think it was just to try to make up for the cover up that I didn't know what I was doing that much. To be honest with you, you could do something crazy and people would forgive you a little bit for not being real polished. Man, when I came to Wildside, and I guess it was like early 2000, I'd already been wrestling, doing podunk stuff or whatever for like 6 or 7 years at that point. So doing that stupid stuff for that amount of time, once I got in there with people who showed me how to slow down, and Bill would tell me, hey, Frankie, you don't got to do it all day. You're taping TV twice a night. Say something for the next one, He helped slow me down a lot, and then, just a toll on your body after some point, that'll help you learn real quick to slow down and make those crazy things mean a lot more.
I've heard a lot of pros say you don't really learn how to work until you get your first major injury and you have to work through it.
Yeah, you know what, man, I would say knock on wood, but I don't see me taking any bumps anytime soon, unless my 3-year-old knocks me over, or I trip over a toy or something, But, I mean, trust me, man, you got a little one, you understand how that goes, but
you can go skating on a Lego at 3 a.m., buddy.
Absolutely, man. I think Legos ought to be banned in all professional wrestling. But, man, just to be honest with you, I never really heard the term bump card until after I was out of the business. And I'm sure mine was getting pretty full. But, I never had anything major, other than I came close to tearing my rotator cuff one time. I had a guy duck me on a dive on the floor. But that's about the worst I ever had. I never had any surgeries, never broke any bones, cracked my nose a couple times via David's fist. I was headbutting his fist pretty hard, is how he would tell the story. But other than that, man, I never really had anything major. Came pretty close to taboo that night, but other than that, I was pretty fortunate, man.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that too, buddy. Just before
I'm not sure that laugh
on,
makes me comfortable.
We'll keep it cool, but I do want to address that. But before we do that, I know you once told me you spent some time like living with Marty Jannetty for a few weeks. Do you care to elaborate on that? Just because I thought it would be an awesome story.
Man, it was. I got booked. There was a guy named Rick Guerin came through Nashville. He was out of Texas, and he was running shows and had a little wrestling school out in Alvin, Texas, which is nobody really knows where it's at except for it's the home of Nolan Ryan. And but he had Marty on shows, and I was a huge Rockers mark, like everybody else, you know, my age and anybody with any kind of wrestling IQ. So I begged to be brought out there, man, and I got treated unbelievably. They flew me out, put me in a hotel, and they took care of me. You know, they took me out every night and this and that. And once me and Marty got to be friends, I would just stay with him the whole time. I won't go into too many crazy details, you know, being a dad now and all that. But Marty, just picture this: me, Marty, and Tommy Rogers taking on the tiny town of Alvin, Texas. That was it was really eye opening, man. It was great times, and just getting to hang out with one of your idols and be treated like an equal and a buddy and a little brother, and he's as wild as his leads you to believe.
Still to this day, man, Marty's one of those guys.
If you haven't read Marty's Facebook, I'm sure he's lost his phone. And then go look at it, and he's rock and roll, man. Until the day he's not, he's going to be rock and roll.
That's why those guys are so successful, though. You know, they lived it. It wasn't a part they were playing. It was just them.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, man. And you know, being a big HBK fan and all that too, getting to hear all the stories about him and Sean, and then you know, kind of living vicariously a little bit, trying to hang with one of the Rockers was pretty cool. Probably not conducive to living a long life. You know, probably. You know, I think they say eating a piece of bacon takes 7 minutes off your life. So I'd hate to see what hanging out with Marty Jannetty does to it.
Well, in addition to all of the debauchery, I'm sure you probably learned a thing or two about wrestling during that time as well.
Absolutely, man. You know, he was really giving up. I went in and I was just a nervous wreck. You know, he was one of the first, you know, really big names I got to work with that I was nervous about wrestling. You know, so when he's like, man, what do you want to do? And just lets me call the match, you know, because I was a heel, and let me call it and just plug his stuff into it. That was a big sign of respect, and you know, it kind of shows you that no matter who you are, you don't have to act like who you are. Does that make any sense at all? You can kind of still be giving and stuff like that, and trust other people to take care of you in the ring, and you know, he could have called an audible at any point, but he just let me have it. And I thought that was really cool of him.
Yeah, it's the old Ricky Morton saying in action, you know, it's be careful of the toes you step on the way up, because they might be connected to the ass you're going to have to kiss on the way down, meaning it's all one family, you know, it's all one thing, and you got to treat it like that, or the young guys don't get the benefit of it, and then the next generation is the shit, and unfortunately we're seeing some of that now.
Yeah, no doubt, man, and that's, once I kind of figured out that, you know, once you figure out to work and you know, it doesn't matter who goes over, that's one of those things, man. When you first start out, winning means everything, or having a belt means everything. Having a belt was the last thing I wanted to do toward, you know, once the Wildside days came about. I think I may have had the TV title for like 30 minutes one night or something like that.
Yeah, and it didn't matter because you worked on top the whole time.
You know, that was Bill having a lot of faith in us. So, and, you know, we were having pretty good matches then, too, so.
Yeah, definitely. Those are great times. Wildside was really a special time, and now as we're coming up on the end of 2014, very likely, as we sit here right now, unless something changes, that the NWA Arena is going to close its doors for good after December. So, you know, really just wanted to reflect on that and talk about just what that time meant to you and all the guys down there.
And, you know, I'd heard something about that. You know, I kind of follow, the Facebook. How old do I sound? The Facebook. Well, I follow the Facebook stuff, but maybe somebody will buy it. I don't know the circumstances or anything surrounding all that. I just kind of see pieces on the timeline. But man, that building's got a lot of history. Those are good fans. I haven't been there in several years, but it's got a fan base that's always been loyal, and there's just so much history that came through there. If anybody can make it work, I'm sure Bill, if he's got any resources available to him, he can figure something out and try to keep that thing rolling. It would be a sad day for Georgia wrestling if there wasn't a show there.
Absolutely. I mean, look at all of the talent that got their preparation for the next level that are the superstars of today that came through there. And, you were one of those guys that benefited from that during the days where we were WCW developmental territory.
Yeah.
We had Terry Taylor down there scouting talent. He saw you and AJ, and then, boom, the next thing you knew, you had a contract. Take us inside that experience. What was it like finally getting to touch that holy grail, if only for a minute?
Man, to be honest with you, I'd been working WCW shows for, I don't even remember what month we were signed in. But I started, my first spot with WCW was on January 3rd of 2000, the very first show of the year, in Greenville, South Carolina. So I'd gotten the opportunity to travel and be a part of that circus for a while. Man, it wasn't as fun once I had a contract as it was when I didn't. They kind of repackaged me and put me in, tights that I wasn't comfortable in. That kind of hindered me a little bit. Not feeling like I could see myself at that point. Really, just not being comfortable. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And then worrying about being on TV and then not knowing that I'd never worn spandex at that point unless it was a rib. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's your Marty Jannetty story. To touch back on that, here's you one I can tell you. So we were having a party at his house one night, naturally. The one party we had, and I went into the closet and I found his gear stuff. So I come out wearing like a mishmash of Rockers gear. I had on like the Leaf Cassidy, that new Rockers singlet. I had on the wristbands from one outfit and the kick pads and knee pads. It was pretty funny. That's about the only Jannetty story I can share that's PG. But that was me being one of the Rockers. I came running out. Like I said, I'd never worn spandex unless it was a rib. But the whole thing with WCW at that point, getting the contract was awesome, man. Feeling like you're being recognized for being a good wrestler, that's a huge thing. But then when they take and repackage you and put you in something you're not comfortable in, and there's just always that bit of doubt in the back of your mind. If they let me keep ripping off the Hardy Boy outfits or wearing pants or something like that where I was comfortable, I think I would have had better matches there. Even we had some pretty good ones, but I think if I hadn't had that little bit of discomfort, that the matches would have been a whole lot better. That little bit of discomfort took a whole lot of. I don't even know how to put it, but it's a little bit of steam out of me, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, well, it can kind of knock your confidence down when you get signed for a reason, and then they say, well, maybe let's not do that. And you're like, well, isn't that why you've signed me? And they do that a lot in wrestling, where, they'll hire a guy because he does something great and then make them change everything about why they wanted him in the first place. And it's like, doesn't make any sense. And there was a lot of uncertainty in the company in general at that time. Everybody knew that it was coming up for sale and they didn't know what was going to happen. I don't think anybody thought the WWE was going to buy them and turn everything into a monopoly, but there was a lot of uncertainty there during that time as well. Despite the run being fairly short, what was your favorite stuff that you did?
Oh, man, us and the Young Dragons was unbelievable. That was a really, really fun match. Cass kept, when we were going over stuff earlier in the day, he kept, you've met Cass because he came to Wildside, right?
Yeah.
So he kept yelling, Top Gun, and like doing airplane spins in the ring the whole time because he had seen us in the fight gear earlier in the day. So, that was just a fun thing. Jimmy's always been good. Man, getting to wrestle Jamie Noble was fun. I've always been a big Jamie fan. You know, the matches were fun. I wish, again, the comfort had been there for me so I could have had a little more, like I said, confidence in what I was doing. So I would have, you know, probably called more stuff for myself and been a little more assertive and aggressive in it. And that's probably, you know, that's probably how it needs to be worded. I think I lost a little bit of my aggression as far as making sure I got my shit in. You know, that's first rule of wrestling, that didn't get your stuff in. But you know, that's the indie guy in me talking. You got to get your stuff in. But I wasn't really aggressive. I kind of let other people build those matches, and I think the reason the Young Dragon was my favorite battle, a little bit heavier hand and kind of us going and putting that one together.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were good matches. And I mean, I understand what you say there, though. It's like that's normally not what you want to do in terms of getting a match over is get your shit in. But in that case, the type of match that they were wanting, you know, you had to, because if you didn't, then you were just going to be one guy out of 7 other guys who were doing all their shit, and you weren't. You know? Well,
you know, bringing that up, actually, my favorite match we ever had with WCW, and I can tell you a few things that were cool that we did as like security spot. My first night in the company, I got spray painted by the NWO, which was pretty cool. You know, I show up in Greenville, and they put me in a paramedic outfit. It was me and TJ Gray, and they put me in a paramedic outfit, and we go in, and the NWO beats us up. I think we were saving to see it, and they beat us up and spray paint us, which was pretty neat, you know. But the favorite match under contract was actually a house show, and I want to say Manchester, Tennessee. But it, you know, there were maybe like 800 people there. Nothing big. It was you know, it was a WCW house show, but it was me and AJ. It was the Young Dragon. It was Shannon and Evan as 3 counts, and then it was Rey Mysterio and Kidman, which was very fun. If you watch the last Nitro, Kidman has stitches above his eye. Do you recall that at all?
I do. I was actually at that show.
Oh, okay. So you remember that. It was funny. I went out first. They wanted the car crash. So I take the bump out first, and Kidman comes over, and I catch him, you know. At that point, AJ's getting ready to dive, and he said, "What's he doing?" And I said, "Man, I think he's coming straight over, you know, just the flip dive that he always did." So Alan goes up and starts doing something and starts twisting, and his knee catches Kidman right above the eye and busts him open. So Kidman comes over to me and says, "He's coming straight over, huh?" So that's a pretty funny story. In that match, man, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's funny for a couple of reasons, because there's actually a little bit of heat with AJ and Kidman there, because I remember when AJ showed up, Kidman got pissed that he was doing the shooting star press. So that adds to that story a little.
Well, I mean, that's okay, too, because the first night when me and Alan did our dark match, he did the shooting styles press to the floor. And we had, you know, the arena in Baltimore was chanting, "Holy crap," you know. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool, and I think that got him heat right off the bat because he could do it. And, you know, nothing against Kidman. He was always okay, but, I mean, he's nowhere near the athlete that Alan is. So Tanay comes up to us after that, and he's like, "What do you call that?" And, man, if my memory serves me correctly, and Alan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I threw shooting styles press out there pretty quick. So that's how that came about. Fast forward to that last Nitro we were talking about a minute ago, and Kidman stitches and all, climbs the ropes and does a shooting styles press. So I jump on the phone, I'm calling out, I'm yelling, "Did you just see that crap?" And I can hear him yelling in the background, you know. We just couldn't believe he went out and blatantly stole our stuff. Which he took that to WWE and did it as well, I believe.
Yes, he sure did. I mean, he was doing the shooting star, you know, for the longest time, but nobody had done it for like in the ring to the floor, and that was what AJ did, and of course he was mad about it. But you know, I mean, I've met Kidman a couple times. He's a good guy. It's always funny to hear those little bitter heat stories between guys.
Man, it's just, I mean, if somebody can do something better, then why not? Dave Young loves to tell a story. I used to do a moonsault, allegedly. It was an alleged moonsault. Back before I learned how to do the flip straight, excuse me, it was kind of crooked. And I did it in Nashville one night at a TV taping, and Tommy Rogers was there, and he walked up to me and said, "Kid, I'm 50 years older than you are. If I can do the flip straight and you can't, don't do the flip."
It is the old Terry Funk moonsault, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Terry Funk's smooth talk made mine look like crap.
Awesome. So I guess, let's see here, we've got about 10 minutes left in the interview-ish, so just want to start winding down the stories.
Okay.
But I know the WCW ended, you actually came back to Wildside. Some guys, when that ended, they were never heard from again. A lot of those development guys, of course, wrestling was in your blood. You had a little bit of a run after that. So at that point, really, what was your mindset? Was it just to go and have fun again and get out there and kind of finish things up on your own terms? Did you have an end game in mind? How did that all play out?
Man, to be honest with you, the stuff after WCW, I'm probably the least proud of. Because at that, you work really hard to get somewhere. And then the rug gets pulled out. The one thing in wrestling that nobody ever thought would happen, Vince McMahon buying the company. I mean, that was the last thing. That was wrestling fiction. You know what I mean? And then it happens. So, getting the rug pulled out from under me, I just, I didn't have it anymore mentally. I just kind of didn't care for a long time. So, it was fun when I was doing it, but I didn't really, the want to went down several notches. But kind of drifted away from wrestling for a long time. Just went and did my own thing, man, and just didn't think about wrestling, which was sometimes that's good. Sometimes you just need to take a break and kind of breathe and then look at something. So when wrestling got to be fun again was when I actually had the opportunity to start running the Perks building in Cedartown. We did some good business there and brought a lot of names in and threw pretty good houses, man. Had a lot of fun. That was when wrestling. That was kind of the way I wanted to go. I had fun. Got to be around my buddies. It was just a package deal of, getting to experience the good parts of wrestling without having all the stress and all that stuff come along with it.
Yeah, I think that's something to be proud of. You had a pretty good run as a booker there during that time, and you did some really good business for about a good year or two straight.
Yeah.
And with indie wrestling, nothing sustains for that long, so eventually it's going to dry up. But it's got to feel good, to have put 2,000 people in a building for an indie show, when nobody's doing that nowadays.
Man, it was, we took it over. There had been wrestling in the building that I'd kind of been a part of, but it wasn't my show. I got to sit down with the owner of the building, and we went over kind of a business plan where I wanted to try something where we kind of hot shot every month, but then, work your names into your stores as well. I kind of started, I don't want to take credit for it because I'm sure somebody did it before I did, but I was, one of the first people around here when you'd have a big name like a Kevin Nash or, Ron or whoever it was, I would have them send me a video saying, hey, I'm coming to Cedartown this day. That way the fans know you're not just putting a picture on a poster, they're actually coming there. And that really helped drive us. The first night we actually tried that model, we had Scotty in there, we had about 900 people. And then we brought Rick in for the following show. And we boosted ourselves up to nearly 1,500 people for just the Steiner Brothers. Just the Steiner Brothers, I say, like, that's not a big thing, but they were the only names on the card. Other than that, it was local, Georgia guys. So doing 1,500 people on an indie show with just two names sprinkled in there, that was pretty awesome to be able to do that. And then that model worked for us, like you said, for about a year and a half. That was just wrestling fantasy camp for me at that point. Me and Bobby were standing in the ring waiting. We were waiting on the Steiners, and Welcome to the Jungle was blaring, and there was this huge crowd. And I felt like an '89 WCW jobber. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm going to get killed, but it's going to be so much fun, that kind of thing. I told Bobby, I said, this is 1989. I said, we're sitting here waiting on the Steiner Brothers. How fun is this? It's just cool, and having him be right there with me was awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And as you mentioned, it is a good way to go out sort of, being a part of a successful operation. Not a lot of people are doing that. And I like what you said about the videos as well, because there are so many shitball fly-by-night promoters, that will just advertise these names that aren't booked. That gives it the seal of approval. They're coming. and they all deliver the
absolutely.
goods. What you also mentioned about having guys wrestle with your guys and do programs, that's something that guys who use names usually don't do. So the guys on the show aren't getting any kind of rub off of it.
Yeah, man, and the one stroke of pure genius I think I ever had was when I'm sorry about that. I had a call coming in and I had to cancel that off real quick. Was when Ron retired at my show. And, I love Ron Simmons, like anybody that knows him does. And I thought, man, I went the way of the authority figure. And what better authority figure than Ron Simmons? So making him my commissioner was probably close to a genius move as I'll ever make, man.
That spot you did with him and AJ was money. I remember being there that night.
I had nothing to do with that. That was all those guys, man. I had zero to do with that. I wish I could take credit for it, but yeah, that was him talking to him about what a champion needs to be and how to carry himself. That was terrific.
And AJ called him boy and sticks the finger in his chest and Ron just knocks him on his ass. And he takes a big flying bump. That was great.
Oh yeah, man, it was funny. It was funny. I think we can. Yeah. How many shows do you get to have two world champions in the ring like that?
Yeah, it was really special, man. It really was. And like you said, Ron Simmons, what a class act that guy is.
Absolutely.
Every time I've gotten to spend a moment with him, he's just the most down to earth, cool guy. Really level headed and loves the business, but likes the people in it, and is just like he's a straight shooter too.
Yeah, I've got a funny Ron story that's pretty short. In his retirement match, we were doing a 6-man, and me and him were on the apron just bull crapping our way through it, and somebody in the ring did something, and it was great, and I yelled, damn, and Ron cuts his head at me real quick and goes, yeah, like I just stole him his line. But that was priceless. It's one of those things you can't, I couldn't pay money to have something like that happen.
No, those are the moments you hang on to forever when, the glory days are gone. And now you've kind of moved on past wrestling. Like you have a life outside of it. You got a family. You seem to be very happy, which I'm thrilled to hear.
Absolutely.
Can you kind of give some advice to guys who can't sort of let go and don't necessarily have that exit strategy and therefore carry a lot of resentment to the after wrestling days?
Man, to be honest with you, it takes a long time to be able to learn to be a regular person after being a wrestler. Going out in front of crowds, having people chant your name, or people talk about those lights. Man, there really is something special, and I don't want to sound cliche, but being under those lights and being in front of a crowd is unbelievable. You've been there, and you know how it is. It's if you could bottle it, you'd make $1 billion. But man, being a normal person is really okay. Folks don't get that sometimes. It's kind of hard sometimes it's hard for fans to let people become normal people again, It was one of those things where you would have people kind of asking like, hey, so what are you doing? Why aren't you wrestling? It's because I don't want to. I'm beat up, I'm old, and I just want to kind of be a normal person. And then, if a fan doesn't want to let go of you, they can make that transition really hard for you sometimes. And, there's resentment there even at some point, But, man, being a normal person, it's fun, man. But being a pretty cool gig now. I've got a beautiful wife and a 3-year-old baby girl who looks like her mama and acts like me. so I'm screwed, But, man, it's awesome to get to, when I'm home and not doing the shoot job, I, cook out and hang out with my parents, which I didn't get to do a whole lot because I was traveling. And just, man, just being part of that little family unit, it's a pretty awesome gig, man. You know that.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that stability when wrestling is so unstable, and you live that whole journey going from the next place to the other. I consider myself kind of in semi-retirement mode. Like, I still do shows because I want to and because it's fun. I don't have any delusions of grandeur of getting to the next level at this point. But, I also don't let it consume my life. Wrestling is there to feel a void of fun and creative expression. But, you know, my family is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done 2 shows, man. I booked a show that was a benefit for breast cancer. And just, I hung out. I ran the dressing room. I didn't want to be a part of it. And then a few months ago, Terry had asked me to do a show with him, just kind of a nostalgia thing. And I went and wrestled. It was us against Buck Bagwell and Robert Gibson. So, man, that's an easy day at the office.
Right, always, yeah.
You know, so that was a fun thing, and the daughter got to see me wrestle, and she enjoyed that. I think she doesn't like it when I'm getting beat up on there. Yeah, you know how that stuff is.
Right.
But you know, it's kind of one of those things where my wife hadn't got to see me wrestle live, so you know, it was fun to get to catch up with Terry and do it again and see if I can still do it. I would say I blew up quicker than I used to, but man, I always blew up in the first 2 minutes of a match anyway. So it's nothing new. But,
it's never known for the cardio conditioning, right?
I can have long matches as long as I was calling it and I could do rest holds, man.
Right on. Well, man, we're out of time. We've got
that went fast,
10 seconds left here, so I just wanted to let you, say any final goodbyes to the fans or listeners or what have you.
Oh, man, it's been fun. Just appreciate you having me on. Still get the occasional random message from fans on Facebook, and that's always welcome, man. If anybody wants to say hello and say that they were a fan or just kind of check and see how I'm doing or just touch base, man, that's always okay. I try to reply to everybody as they come. So, man, it's still pretty cool to be remembered this far out of the game. So I appreciate everybody, man. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for joining the show, folks. We're out of time. We'll catch you next week. This is the Reverend for their parents. Keep one foot in the gutter and one fist in the gold. We are out.